Welcome back to episode 19 of Plat'n. It is crazy that we are almost at episode 20. Today we have Dr. Pepper's account. They have about 1,767 games, which is a crazy amount. The account was started 11 years ago with both their first Platinum trophy and their first trophy in general being from the same game in Saints Row 3, which is a game I quite enjoyed back in the day. I remember going for a lot of the achievements back on the Xbox 360 in like 2011. I was a wee young lad. I would have just started high school, which is a terrifying thing to think about. I had hair back then. But we're going to jump into the account. Now, I will say, just a disclaimer before we jump in, of the games on this account, quite a few of them are relatively quicker and easier games that I just can't talk about. Like, there's nothing I can really say. Now, I have talked to the owner of the account in the Discord, the Platinum Standard. Do join it. Shameless plug is shameless. And we have agreed that what I will do is I will do games that are of a 50% Platinum rarity and downwards. So I've sorted the account into that, and I will start at about 50% and work down from there. So that way the account is still covered, because I don't want to skip people or anything like that. But I'm also able to talk about the games as well, which I think leads to just an overall more entertaining episode personally. There are definitely some very, very good games to see on this list that we'll obviously see very shortly. Now, I will say, if you would like your own list looked at, do leave it in the comments below, or join the Platinum Standard Discord and leave them there. You'll see the entire list and the order that I try and stick to is as much as possible over on the Discord. The link is in the description. We are starting a spooky ABCs competition to celebrate Halloween, where we're playing a bunch of scary games together. It's fun, so do join. We'll be very friendly. We have cookies. Anyway, let's look at Dr. Pepper's account right now. We then have Duke Nukem 3D 20th Anniversary Tour. This is, of course, the 20th anniversary of the original Duke Nukems, which were kind of like, almost like Doom clones, I guess you would describe them as. We then have the auto pop for RE2. Haven't done the 100%. I haven't done it personally on the PS4 version. Of course, with the PS5 version, you can auto pop, I think, everything but the DLC. I think you have to do at least one of the trophies in the DLC legit. I think you have to do the petrol station, or the fuel station, I guess, for the Americans here. I think you have to do that one legit, where you got to kill 100 zombies within the building itself, and you're not allowed to leave. Stranger of Paradise, a Final Fantasy Origin. I did not know you could auto pop that as well. I think this is like the Final Fantasy Dark Souls-ish spin-off thing. I heard good things. I remember hearing very good things about this. I didn't know it had DLC, actually. I thought this was... I know you can do it legit very quickly. I think it takes between 8 and 15 hours-ish, which is very short for a Final Fantasy game. But I did not know that you could auto-pop it in 1 minute and 5 seconds. We then have Mass Effect 3. This is the conclusion of the original trilogy. We don't talk about Andromeda. Like I said with Mass Effect 2, open world, relationships with your companions, all that fun stuff. This ties in the narrative with the first two games, ends the trilogy. I remember people were very not happy with how this finished when the game came out, but I think DLC sort of redeemed it. I think they came in and made it a little bit better in terms of quality. We've got Virtual Fighters 2 in 13 minutes. Of these very fast. Steam Tactics is a game I've never heard of, but I think is like a grid-based game. I've got a hunch for some reason, not entirely sure why. Code Realize, Guardian of Rebirth. This is one of the Code games alongside things like Code Veronica. We then have Paw Patrol Mighty Pups. This is I think Paw Patrol is like a TV show for kids. I think this is like, I mean, my generation had Bear in the Big Blue House and Bob the Builder, but I think the current one has things like Paw Patrol. And I think this is a movie tie-in game for that. I think. I'm not. I haven't watched children's TV shows in about 20 years, so I'm not up to date with them. Bear in the Big Blue House, though, god tier. That show was so good. Dragon Dance, I feel like you'll appreciate that one. We then have Persona 5 Dancing in the Starlight. Now I can't stop thinking about Bear in the Big Blue House. I have to get that up on YouTube later. That show was a banger. But Persona 5 Dancing in the Starlight, like the Persona 3 dancing game earlier, spin-off to the mainline series, dancing rhythm themed, usually a lot easier than the actual base games that are very, very hefty. But you smashed it out in a day and 4 hours, which is very impressive, Dr. Pepper. We then have Alone Together. This is a game where you are alone, but along together. I can't speak today. I am very tired today. I went to bed at 4:30 and I got up at 7, so I'm feeling it. But we then have We Were Here. This is, of course, a game that we see most weeks. I think we usually see the whole trilogy most weeks. But We Were Here is essentially a two-person co-op thing, similar to things like It Takes Two, where you've got to get through a mansion with puzzles that you have to solve together. We then have Horizon Forbidden West in 1 second. That is a second too much to play that game. Dr. Pepper, are you okay? That is a second too long. That's actually a glitch. That game doesn't exist. It's a shame they never made a sequel to Horizon Horizon Zero Dawn. That's the one. Jeez, my brain had a meltdown just then. And it reminds me it's got DLC. I don't want to do the DLC for that game. I don't even want to think about that game, to be perfectly honest with you. Plague Tale Innocence in a day and 6 hours. This is, of course, a very, very fun game. Requiem, the sequel, comes out this month, and I am beyond excited for it. But this is essentially one big escort mission, but it's a good one. Your escort isn't mindless. You're in sort of 15th century France. You're trying to escape the Inquisition. There's a lot of rats. But highly, highly recommend Plague Tale Innocence. I adore that game personally. We then have Ghost of Tsushima. I know you also have the PS5 version. We won't see that here. It's a little bit above 50%, but I was scrolling before. Open World Samurai. Very fun gameplay. I really enjoy the weapon stances. The fox stands and some of the collectibles are definitely a bit much. You're sort of very done with it by the time you wrap up the game. I also have to do the raid and the Ghost of Ishi Isle. I can tell just looking at the 52 of 77 trophies you do as well. I think there's also New Game Plus in there as well, which that's a lot of Ghost of Tsushima. It's a fun game, but that is a lot of Ghost of Tsushima. Spider-Man 100%. I love to see the 100%. Nice work, Dr. Pepper. This is, of course, open world in New York. You're playing as Peter Parker or Spider-Man. Spoilers, Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Do a bunch of side activities. The trophies are very, very easy. This is one of those games you'll always see on top insert number here. Easy platinums for beginners and stuff like that. Maybe I should do a video like that on the channel. Let me know if you'd like to see that. We then have Elden Ring in 2 weeks. It came out this year. It's a lot of people's game of the years. Open world Dark Souls. Very good game. I really enjoyed Elden Ring. I was actually a part of Missing Collectibles lore video for that. So do give that a look in if you want to hear my sexy, sexy voice doing a voiceover about the lore of Elden Ring. We went very in depth on that lore before even people like Vardy Video got a video out. So get around that video there. It's a good one. But Elden Ring, very, very fun. I will say the trophies are very easy. If you look there, you can see that the platinum is nearly 50% completion. And I can 100% agree with that. Most of the trophies are not missable. I think one trophy is technically missable. But most of them are just fighting and killing the bosses. And for the most part, those bosses are on the way to the main objectives. So definitely a fun one. Also, you can cheese a lot of it. It's an open world game, which means there's a lot of you being able to get into areas the boss can't and then kill them via range and stuff like that. That wasn't as possible to do in the Souls games or Bloodborne or any of those fun ones. But yeah, definitely very fun game. Definitely want to recommend. Love to see that 100%. Little Nightmares 2. This was one of the favorite games that I played last year. I actually played this game on stream and I adored it. I'm actually doing the 100% for the first game right now. I will be working on a video for that, hopefully, fingers crossed. Depends how bad at the game I am. But I'll be working on that after I record this one, funny enough. Very fun game. It's sort of a a linear side scroller. You got to sort out a lot of puzzles. It's a very dark and creepy world. There's a lot of really creepy stuff in these two games, but you smashed that out. 5 hours and 44 minutes is very impressive. I love to see that there, Dr. Pepper. Persona 5 Royal Edition, that is actually way higher than I thought that'd be. I guess just the standard Persona 5 is considerably lower. I do know that Royal sort of streamlined some of the more complex things. I think it made it so that the things you do on days were less. I think there was more breathing room or something like that, maybe. But I've heard amazing things about Persona. I definitely need to try Persona 5 at some point. I need to just sit down and do it. We then have the Forgotten City. This is sort of I think you're in a hub in a city that's in a cave or something from memory. I've heard the dialogue be described as very Skyrim-y, which some people really enjoy, some people don't. You smashed out in a day in 23 hours, so I'm going to suggest that you really enjoyed it there. We then have Panda Run, followed by Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, which is, of course, the sequel to the first Spider-Man game that we saw before. This time you're playing as Miles. I've heard very, very good things about this game. I need to sit down and do it myself. One thing that is interesting to note about Miles Morales is I believe there's a New Game Plus trophy, and it's actually in the base game list. Normally they come out a month or two, 6 months, several years later with a New Game Plus, but this is the only example I can think of where that actually features in the base game list, which is interesting. Race with Ryan, I think this is sort of a more children-friendly racing game akin to things like Mario Kart. We then have Creature in the World, which I'm not entirely sure what that is. Do let me know in the comments if you know what that is. We then have Job Simulator, which is a VR game where you complete a bunch of various different tasks for jobs. Subnautica Below Zero in 52 minutes. That's a dev menu. I know there's a dev menu in the first game because I used it myself, but I wasn't entirely sure that there was one in the second game there. Sorry if you can hear geese in the background. They're going mad. But we then have Life is Strange 2. This is the third Life is Strange game because you've got the first game, then Before the Storm. This is with separate unique characters. You play as essentially two brothers that I think are on the run for a good chunk of the game. This is the only Life is Strange I haven't played because I did not hear particularly good things about this one. My opinion on the series goes something like this. But I thought the first game was kind of pretty meh. The second, Before the Storm, was okay, but True Colors was really good. I really enjoyed that one. Yoku's Island Express. This is another sort of semi-open collectathon akin to things like Jack and Daxter. The Medium is a game that I'm actually very curious to try myself at some point. This is a game where you play as a medium, someone who can communicate with spirits, and I've heard very, very good things about it. Yeah, this is one I definitely need to try. I wonder if this is free on Extra. This would be a very good M game for the Spooky ABC competition in the Discord. So if you guys are watching, do take note of this one. We then have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Cowabunga Collection. This is a collection of older Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games from a lot of consoles from sort of the 90s and early 2000s bundled into one cheeky collection. Ice Age Scrat's Nutty Adventure. This is, I believe, free on PS Plus. It can be completed relatively quickly with a day and 19 hours there from Dr. Pepper. And I believe this is a fairly linear game featuring the character Scrat from Ice Age. Cotton Reboot, I'm not entirely sure what that is. The Raven, I think, is kind of an artsy horror game of sorts, I believe. We then have Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. That's a cheeky auto pop I'm seeing right there with the 10 minutes. I'm not entirely sure what actually takes 10 minutes. Normally an auto pop is a minute kind of thing. So I assume you had to go and do a task, maybe a combat task or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. But Fallen Order is very fun. It's kind of like a baby's first Dark Souls game set in Star Wars. You've got a bunch of different planets where you can explore fairly complex environments. I will say my only negative about the game is the map is incredibly hard to navigate, but overall very, very fun experience, and I love to see it completed there. I assume you also have the PS4 version to have been able to get the auto pop for the PS5. We then have Far Cry 3 Classic Edition. This is the PS4 remaster of Far Cry 3 from the PS3. the Far Cry game that really blew up that series in the mainstream. I remember when everyone was absolutely adoring Vaas as a villain, and he still is a very well-written villain. I think the actor's name is Michael Mando, did a phenomenal job in this game. Personally, I actually think Far Cry 4 is better. I really like Pagan Min as a character. I do wish we saw more of him, but definitely a very, very fun one and a nice one to see. The positive about the PS4 version is you actually don't have to do the multiplayer that was featured in the PS3 version. So if you were on the fence, do get onto this one. We then have Persona 5 Royal again. This is the North American version of the game. I think you actually were a day faster on the EU version, but you're roughly around the same time period for both, which is very, very impressive to see. Word Quiz, I think, is our first non-platinum that we've seen so far, which is interesting. I'm not entirely... I assume this is just they give you a bunch of jumbled letters and you have to find the words for it. I assume that's how that works. I would be curious, Dr. Pepper, why... you put this down in July, and is this one you do plan on going back to at some point? Bug Snacks, 100%, not 100%, just the base game. You did it when it was free for the PS5 users on PS Plus. I would say, Dr. Pepper, this is a fun one to go back and do at some point. I did like that DLC. Bug Snacks is very, very fun. Think Pokemon Snap, but you then capture the creatures and then feed them to people, which, now I'm thinking about it, is very dark and twisted. Wonder Book of Potions, I've never heard of, but you did do it this year, which is cool to see. We then have Accounting Plus. This was, I believe, the guys involved with Rick and Morty were involved with Accounting Plus. It's a very humorous VR experience where you essentially go on like a mini adventure. It doesn't take very long. I think you can actually beat the game in like 2 hours kind of thing. We then have The Wolf Among Us, which is a interesting Telltale game in that it's kind of a take on a bunch of Grimm's fairy tales, but with a dark twist on them, which is funny me saying that given that the original source material is dark and twisted. But essentially, fairy tale monsters are being killed and you play as a detective who must solve the case. This is actually one that I do really want to try at some point. I'm not a big Telltale person myself personally, but that is one that I do want to give a crack at some point. We then have the first Jack and Daxter, another big collectathon sort of game. Red Matter is one that I'm semi-curious about at some points. This is sort of an action game. We then have LA Cops, not complete, with a cheeky 62%, which is interesting to see there. Again, I think this is the second non-platinum we've seen so far. Is this one you plan on going back to at some point, potentially? Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Another cool one to see. This is a fighting game. We then have Jack and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy, Retromania Wrestling. It's a side beat 'em up wrestling game, I believe. Control, the Japanese version, in 1 year and 10 months. I'm guessing the DLC is the reason that took so long. You went back and cleaned the DLC up in August. I assume if you got the Japanese edition, you really enjoyed the game and you've done the North American and the EU versions as well, which is kind of cool. Control being a action adventure game where you essentially play as a character trying to contain a breach within the Paranormal Investigations Bureau, which is a really cool concept. I definitely was sick of the DLC by the time I was done though. Murdered Soul Suspect, you play as a ghost detective trying to work out who killed you as a detective before your death. I actually remembered what it was about. That's a first on this series. It only took 19 episodes. That's a pat on the shoulder for old Symmetry. But we then have Game Tengoku Cruisin' Mix. Rhythm game, I assume, based on Cruisin' Mix. The Walking Dead, the Telltale Definitive Series. This is all of the Walking Deads bundled into one cheeky little package there. Arcade series, Miss Pac-Man. My Riding Stable's Life with Horses. Same. Stranger in Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin. I knew we'd see this here. Like I said when we saw the auto pop, Dark Souls-ish game. You played that a day before my birthday. You haven't done the DLC though, so Dr. Pepper, get onto that. Persona 4 Dancing All Night. This is the third of the dancing spin-offs that we've seen so far. Like I said, spin-off from the base game, very rhythm-based and stuff like that. We then have Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage. This is the second of the trilogy, meaning that we've now completed the full trilogy, which is awesome. I love to see that. We then have Horizon Forbidden Glitch. This game doesn't exist. This is not here. This is a bug in the system. Oh, and it has DLC. I don't want to do the DLC. We then have Job Simulator again on the North American version this time in a significantly faster time of 4 hours and 50 seconds. Tunic, this is a game that has only just come out, actually. It's a few days old, that I want to play this game. It reminds me very heavily of Death's Door, which if you are a veteran of the channel, you hear about me talk about Death's Door every day. Very, very good game. But Tunic is an adventure game. It's sort of an adventure Metroidvania sort of game. You have a book that you have to translate various different things using stuff you find in the world. It looks amazing. Do let me know what it is like. I'm very excited to play that myself. Day of the Tentacle, this is a LucasArts point-and-click adventure. Alchemist Simulator, you play as an alchemist, believe it or not. Another stack of Game of Thrones. Oceanhorn Monster of Uncharted Seas. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy in an... Oh, that is a very fast time to complete. Is that an auto pop? I assume that's an auto pop. Control on the PS5 this time. We then have It Takes Two, which is the co-op game where you and a partner have to go on an adventure together and use the power of teamwork to overcome a bunch of challenges. Ghostwire Tokyo is a cool one to see here. This is an open world game set in Tokyo where a bunch of demon spirits have essentially taken everyone, so the city is just no one's there. You're seeing clothing on the ground and stuff like that. I've heard the game is fun but very repetitive. It's one I actually really want to try myself that I just keep putting off because I've like 400 games in the backlog at this point. We then have What Remains of Edith Finch, which is a walking sim that is very, very good. I know Dibble from Missing Collectible adores this game. Mentioning them a lot this episode. Are they going to sponsor me? Maybe they'll pay me to do these episodes moving forward. Educational game for kids is an educational game for kids. We then have Ghost Giant VR, which is an interesting adventure game of sorts, relatively short with a 2.5 hour time for completion. Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice. I think at this point I am the only account on this series not to have Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice. You play as a Viking lady that has several different sort of mental challenges to overcome, I guess, and is one that I'm definitely really wanting to play at some point. Subnautica on the PS5, cheeky auto pop right there. I recognize that completion time. We then have Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, which does confirm my suspicions that the PS5 one was an auto pop. Fun game, crap combat. We then have Marvel Superhero Squad Comic Combat. I've never heard of that one. We then have The Order 1886, which is a very fun sort of very cinematic short action game where you play as a knight of the round table fighting werewolves and one random vampire. We then have A Way Out, which is a 2-player co-op experience where you and a partner have to break out of prison, much in the same way as It Takes Two. In fact, I think they were made by the same people, potentially. We then have Spyro 3 Year of the Dragon, the third in the trilogy. You love to see it. Shenmue was a game that I believe came out on the Dreamcast. I think it was the Dreamcast. It was an open world RPG-ish experience where it was almost like a predecessor to things like Yakuza, I guess, is how I would describe it. It's an interesting experience. I actually have played Shenmue. One of the really neat things about this that I believe Plat'n has talked about a few times is there was a lot of... You could ask characters quite a lot of things and their responses were quite complex, especially for 1999, I think the game came out. I'm not sure, because I think there's 3 Shenmue games. I'm not sure if the other 2 have trophies. I would definitely love to know though, and I should do Shenmue at some point. This is a good reminder that I need to do this game at some point. Stray, I have a video on the channel, do go check it out. You play as a cat, you are trying to escape a city that is sort of underground in a facility, I guess. There's a lot of robot dudes. Fun experience, very quirky, but I think this game would have been a lot more forgettable had you not played as a cat. I think a lot of the hype was based purely around that. We then have Resident Evil 3 with the first of the Mass Effect trilogy right there. We still haven't seen the Legendary Edition, but I am expecting it to be significantly rarer than the actual trilogy themselves. We then have another version of Control's Japanese version with the PS5 this time. Serial Cleaner, which is a game where you play as a cleaner that goes into crime scenes and has to try and clean up as much of it to stop the police from finding evidence. Bridge Constructor, you construct bridges. Ace Attorney is a game where you play as a lawyer defending various clients. Jak 3, the third game in the Jak trilogy, with Combat Racer being the fourth game and standalone. Outriders is like a Borderlands-y sort of shooter, like a looter shooter, I guess you would say. You go into missions, you come out with better loot, you try and improve your character as much as possible. Life is Strange, the first Life is Strange game, you play as a girl who can go back 20 seconds in time or 30 seconds in time, and you have to navigate various different scenarios by sort of using sort of a 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards sort of mentality. We then have Captain America. This is a movie tie-in game for Captain America on the PS3. I think Thor also has a game like this. I'm not entirely sure. Valhalla is here. We got Volume. Trivial Pursuit is obviously Trivial Pursuit. We've got Infamous Festival of Blood. This is the standalone for Infamous 2, standalone DLC where you fight vampires. It's very, very fun. We then have Shadowin rather. We've got JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Invisible Hours, Marquette, which is a puzzle game that came out on PS Plus last year, I believe. Destiny 2, of course, the sequel to Destiny, big MMO shooter of sorts. We've got Outriders again. Headlander. The Saw games are actually very nice to see here. I love to see Saw. This was sort of a spiritual successor to the first Saw movie. It's a return of Danny Glover's character, which is kind of cool. Very fun games, very expensive if you try and get them physically on the PS3 these days. We then have the Infectious Madness of Dr. Decker. Drover Saves the Universe is a very, very fun game made by the guys who did Rick and Morty. Resident Evil 7, of course, you'd love to see that. We have the Platinum Journey for that game on the channel itself. Very, very fun video. Do give it a watch. Shameless plug is shameless. We then have ESA Origins, Control. This is like the 48th version of Control we've seen so far. Favorite game, perhaps, Dr. Pepper? Do let me know. It does seem like you really enjoy Control. WWE Legends of WrestleMania. I'm sure Banana Sausage will enjoy seeing that one there. We've got another Nier game in Nier Automata, rather. The first Borderlands on the PS4. Very, very fun game. You haven't done the DLC though, which, thinking about it, justified. The Claptap DLC and the Zombies one are brutal to do the grindy trophies in. Horizon Zero Dawn again. We've got Untitled Goose Game, which is a game where you play as a goose and cause havoc in a couple of different environments. It's very, very fun. Transference, we've got in 47 minutes. That's actually pretty impressive. Strike Solitaire. This is just solitaire with bowling. We've got Celeste, which is a fun, correct me if I'm wrong, but Celeste is a game where essentially it's like a platformer of sorts. I'm going to assume you did it. You can use essentially an assist mode where you just have unlimited jumps. Otherwise, this game is significantly harder than the 30% platinum rarity. But essentially, you have like an alternate ego or alternate personality that is always trying to end your run. Essentially, it's a very unique concept. It is free on PS Plus Extra, and it is one I definitely want to do very, very soon. Dishonored: Death of the Outsider. This was like a spin-off to Dishonored 2. We've then got Wonderbook Book of Spells. I think this is the second Wonderbook game we've seen on the account so far. Days Gone, the Platinum, not the 100%. I've talked about this in depth. I completely understand that. The DLC for that game is poop. We've got Bloodstained Curse of the Moon. This is a spin-off to Castlevania, I believe, with the Bloodstained reference. Lego Lord of the Rings. This was a very fun Lord of the Rings Lego game. This was definitely in the height of those games still being quite enjoyable. We've got Control number 412. We've got Far Cry New Dawn. This was a very disappointing Far Cry game. I think I did it in about a day. Very short, very boring. Brought in a weapon system where if you just got a good weapon at the start of the game, you never used anything else again because they just weren't viable. The villains are completely forgettable. I don't even remember who the villain. I think it's like two sisters or something, but I don't remember what they do. I think they just are villains because the game needs a villain. Cult of the Lamb in 2 weeks is really impressive. I really want to play this myself. I wonder actually if that game could be used for the spooky competition. I assume it could. I need to maybe I need to look into that. We've got The Last of Us Part 2. Like I said before, fun game. Story definitely needed a bit of work, and it is far too long. But I do love that you've got the 100% there, Dr. Pepper. That is very, very impressive. God of War 2018, definitely excited for Ragnarok to come out. This was a take on the hack and slash formula they did before. They turned it more into sort of a Last of Us kind of slow burner, but it is definitely still very enjoyable. We've got 8-Bit Adventure Anthology. Indivisible really cool to see. I didn't know that there was unobtainables here. 3 unobtainable trophies in Indivisible. Hopefully, ooh, well, you unfortunately, you don't have the 100% because no one does. We've got Operation Tango. This is a game where you and a teammate have to get through different scenarios where one of you is the eyes in the sky and the other one is the field agent. Very interesting concept. Brothers of Tale 2 Son. Tesla Grad is an interesting one. It's essentially Nikola Tesla and you are... geez, how would I describe it? It's worth playing. It's definitely a very good one, and I would say it's definitely worth a look into. Chicory, A Colorful Tale is actually one I'm really, really keen to play. It's actually free on PS Plus Extra as of last month, so I am definitely very excited to give this one a crack myself. Essentially, you are coloring in a world as you explore it. It's interesting. It's very similar. So it gives me a lot of Tome vibes. I know a lot of people are playing Tome at the moment. If you enjoyed Tome, give Chicory a look into as well. We've got Samurai Showdown, the Neo Geo collection of Neo Geo games brought forward to the PS4. Infamous Second Son, this is I think this was a launch title for the PS4. If it wasn't launched, it was very close. You played as Delson in Seattle. You have smoke powers initially, but you get more powers later on. It's an okay game, but it's definitely not as good as the original games. Narcos Rise of the Cartels, I think, is an XCOM clone. No, there is an XCOM clone for this. Far Cry 6, fun game, fun Far Cry game. Story's okay. DLC sucks. Ubisoft has this thing at the moment where they love roguelikes, and boy, I am so excited for them to get out of that phase because they don't do them well. Ukulele and the Impossible Lair. This is a collectathon, essentially similar to like Jack and Daxter and stuff like that. Valhalla again. We've got Demon Souls is 100% in 2 days. It's actually very impressive. You must have burned through that game. Jeez, that's actually really cool to see. Far Cry Primal. This is the Far Cry game where you play as cavemen. Adventures of Mana. We got Hades 100%. I have 1%. One day I'll clean up Hades. Again, roguelikes just aren't my thing personally, but I can absolutely see why people love them. Barbie and Her Sister's Puppy Rescue. I didn't know was a game on the PlayStation. I'm going to make that a milestone. We've got Assassin's Creed Origins, the first of the Witcher clone set in Egypt. Bayek is an amazing character. The trophies are all fairly still doable without being fully bloated at this point, like Valhalla, for example. But I miss the old formula, so I do have to blame Origins to an extent for the change. House of the Dead Remake. This is the game you're currently playing to get in the swing of Halloween. I believe it's an on-rail shooter. Lego Marvel Superheroes Universe in Peril. This is the Vita version of Lego Marvel Superheroes. We then have Bridge Constructor Portal, which is Bridge Constructor mixed with the game Portal. Level 22, Final Fantasy VII Remake Auto Pop right there. You haven't done the DLC though. I would be interested, Dr. Pepper, if you plan on doing that in the future. We then have Lego Movie, the video game. Tekken. We got the pixelated version of Ark. We have Planet of the Apes Last Frontier, which I think you could also do on VR from memory. Lego Jurassic World a second time. Kentucky Route Zero TV Edition. Oxenfree's one that I'm tempted to do at some point myself. No Heroes Allowed VR. We've got Hotel Transylvania 3, Monsters Overboard. This is obviously a movie tie-in to the movie Hotel Transylvania, which I think has Adam Sandler in it from memory. Floor Plan Hands-On Edition, Final Fantasy VII, the original version, the PlayStation 1 version ported to the PS4, which in my opinion is a hell of a lot better than the remake, purely because it didn't need 70 hours of bloat. We then have Penny Arcade Adventures on Rain Slick Precipice of Darkness, episode 1, I assume. Episode 2 rather, because there's a 2 icon there. I'm a big brain detective, but I'm assuming that it clearly wasn't very memorable if you only did the second episode and never bothered with the rest. Spiritfarer, you play as a child or a young person who is making sure that spirits meet the afterlife. It's a very cute, artsy game. Definitely wasn't what I was expecting. I do want to play this at some point, but I've watched a few good friends of mine play this recently, and it looks very, very interesting. You're essentially guiding spirits to the afterlife, making sure you meet their needs before they go, sort of thing. Very cool concept, actually. God of War 2, the second God of War game, hack and slash. Back when these games were very fast-paced and incredibly gory. I do miss these games, and I wish we would get a collection remaster on modern consoles so that I could platinum them. Call of Cthulhu, this was an interesting take on the Call of Cthulhu mythos. You are a detective who goes to an island to sort out a murder mystery, and you get raveled into some real culty stuff. The trophies did glitch on me. I had to do multiple playthroughs for this game, but it's enjoyable. There's a lot of missable trophies. You 100% need a guide for Call of Cthulhu. Arcade Adventures Anniversary Collection, a bunch of arcade games ported to the PS4. South Park The Fractured But Whole is the second of the South Park turn-based RPGs. You play as superheroes as opposed to medieval characters in the first game. But it's fun. I didn't like it as much as Stick of Truth, but it's still pretty top tier. Assassin's Creed 2 on the PS3. This is a lot of people's first platinum trophy. You did it in 2018 for 3 days and 9 hours. Birth of Ezio. What else can I say? It's chef's kiss. We then have Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order on the NA version. I explained it above with the PS5's auto pop. This is a Dark Souls sort of game set in Star Wars. We then have Bully, which is Rockstar's like GTA school game, which is very, very fun. It's very, very fun. Bully is interesting story. I really like the idea of going to classes and stuff like that. You essentially have to do your main missions whilst also being good at school. Collectibles were interesting too. I remember Beautiful Torment in the Discord telling me that during seasons, collectibles that would be out normally, for example, when it's winter and snowy, would actually be brought into a warehouse and stored over winter, which was a very interesting concept. Sinking City is the second Call of Cthulhu Shakespearean game that came out at the very same time. This time you play as a detective who goes to an island city to solve a murder, because we didn't have that the first time. I like this one more. There's a really cool concept of you have to learn locations of stuff, like, for example, buildings, residences, people who attended hospitals, using record papers, doctor certificates, stuff like that. It's an experience that I haven't really seen in another game. The only other one that comes to mind is the Sherlock games, which we saw above. But yeah, Sinking City is one I would 100% recommend, especially as we get into Halloween season. This is one I would say give a try. In fact, this has actually inspired me to do maybe a little video, maybe a little top 7 or top 5 or top 10 video at some point. So Dr. Pepper, thank you for the idea real quick. Goat Simulator, you play as a goat. The DLC, which you have completed, and I love to see that you've completed, is very interesting. There's a lot of World of Warcraft memes, zombie memes. I think you go to the moon at one point. But the fact that you got Flappy Bird in 3 days is very impressive. I love to see that. We then have arcade game series Dig Dug, a classic arcade game from the 80s and 90s. We've got a Japanese game that I'm not entirely sure what that is, but looks like it's a dancing game based on the thumbnail. Blizzard Arcade Collection. Prince of Persia: The Forgotten Sands. This is obviously a precursor to the modern Assassin's Creed games. Broken Age from the Philippines? I want to say PH is the Philippines. Conan Exiles, this was free on Plus. You could use the dev menu to pop quite a lot of these trophies. Rime was the first platinum that I have on Symmetry. It's a very fun sort of adventure indie game where you play as a little boy trying to essentially find belonging. We've got Infamous First Light. This is a spin-off to Infamous Second Son. Very point scory sort of arena-based sort of game. I wasn't as big a fan of this, but you can knock it out pretty quick, as Dr. Pepper has here with a day and 47 minutes. We've got Iron Cryptical, another console commanded Subnautica. Subnautica is fun, but it doesn't run very well on console, in my opinion. It doesn't run very well at all on console, in my opinion. The UI is very bad too. We've got Dragon Age 11 Echoes of an Elusive Age, which is another one I really want to play at some point. Love to see you've got the 100% there with 2 years and 5 months. So you've gone back to that this year, to start this year. What a way to start this year, actually. Rift Tracks, we've got Crossing Soul, Hypnospace Outlaws, Resident Evil 5, you've done the platinum to 100%. This is the Resident Evil set in Africa with Chris Redfield and Sheva. We need another game with Sheva. Bring back Sheva. Sheva was a fun character. We've got Final Fantasy 15. You've got the platinum, not the 100%. One of the DLCs in this, Comrades, is technically unobtainable. You can technically get it by just rolling back to a patched version prior to them shutting Comrades from the base game. They made it a standalone, but that is somewhat difficult to do unless you know exactly what you're doing. Grim Fandango as LucasArts, you play as a skeleton detective. I expect you to die too. Dying. Tearaway is sort of like a Mario paper mache sort of hybrid of sorts. Jack 3 for the second time, I believe. Got Lego Star Wars The Force Awakens. Ratchet and Clank, this is the 2016 movie tie-in / reboot of the original. We got a Pac-Man. Nickelodeon Car Racers is the Nickelodeon equivalent of Mario Kart, so featuring characters like SpongeBob. South Park The Stick of Truth, this is the first of the South Park games. You play very turn-based. You play as your own little character. It's very Dungeons and Dragons-y, which I really enjoyed this one. This is definitely my favorite of the two games. We've got Crayola Scoot, which no clue. I believe it's based on Crayolas, which are like crayons. Another version of Ukulele. We've got an Olympic game here in Tokyo 2020. We've got a cheeky Yu-Gi-Oh here at only 50% completion. It's rare that we don't see the 100% on this account, which I really, really enjoy, actually. I love seeing so many games complete. We've got Desert Child, Psychonauts in the Rhombus of Ruin, Darksiders, which is the first of that series. It's like a Metroidvania sort of hack and slash. I love the first game. Highly, highly recommend it. Saw 2, sequel to the first Saw game that we saw before. Not as good, but definitely still an enjoyable sort of action horror game. The second BioShock game on the PS2, you haven't done the DLC. God of War 1, the original hack and slash God of War. Definitely very excited for Ragnarok later next month, I think. I think it's next month. We then have Resident Evil 2. You've done the platinum, but not the DLC. This is the one set in primarily the police station. It's the introduction to Leon Kennedy, obviously a fan favorite of the series now. Watch Dogs 2, I adore this game. I can near guarantee that it's one of those like Mercenaries multiplayer trophies you're missing. I do think that this game would have been better. See, Marcus is depicted as being very anti-violence, but you can use guns. I think an interesting approach would have been to force the player to not be lethal. I think that definitely would have added a bit of a dynamic to this game that would have been very, very enjoyable. Erica is it's not a horror game. I'm thinking of Claire. Erica is the movie sort of a game where you're just sort of making different decisions based on outcomes that you're seeing in the dialogue. Sonic Ultimate Genesis Collection, bunch of Sonic games from the Genesis. Lego Marvel Superheroes, I think this is the second one we've seen on this so far. Deathloop here, this is a game, it's like a first-person shooter roguelike made by the guys that did Dishonored and Prey. I haven't heard as good things about Deathloop, and I do know they released a DLC like a month ago. Absolute drifters here, and only an 18%. I'd be interested to know why you put that one down and maybe haven't gone back to it just yet, Dr. Pepper. Dark Cloud is a port of the PS2 RPG. Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl is like Nickelodeon's equivalent of Smash Bros, so with famous Nickelodeon characters. We then have the Mark of Kree, which is like an action game of sorts. Jak 2 is here. We've got Rage 2 being not good. That's got a lot more DLC than I thought it did, actually. Wow, 21 trophies for DLC is rough. This was like, they took Rage, which was a fun, like, sort of Borderlands-inspired game on the PS3, and they made it very Far Cry, and it is very... I know that the collectibles suck, because the collectibles move. Like, they move around the map, and that is awful. Wolfenstein The New Order was the rebooted Wolfenstein series first game. BJ Blazkowicz, it's amazing. Highly recommend this one. Among Us... We all know what Among Us is. Watch Dogs Legion is the most recent Watch Dogs game and the worst Watch Dogs game. A lot of DLC I have to go back and clean up myself. There's no main character, but so you can just pick anyone off the street that has skills and stuff like that. But they did this weird thing where they had like 5 voice actors and they just changed the pitch, tone, and bass of people's voices to make them sound different. And it sounds weird. I did not like it at all. Another version of Among Us, Saints Row the Third on the PS4. The PS3 version of this is your very first Platinum trophy. You went and did the remaster of this in 2020. You didn't do the DLC though, which is a shame because there's some very good DLC on that game, and I know it is built in. So maybe go back and clean that one up at some point, Dr. Pepper. Death Stranding Director's Cut, post-apocalyptic Postman Simulator with Norman Reedus. We've got Disaster Report 4, The American Dream, Assassin's Creed Syndicate's 100%. I love seeing that because that is... The DLC for Syndicate does not come out often. Oh, I'm seeing Graveyard Keeper, and I'm a massive fan. This is already my favorite account of all time now. In fact, Duck Dynasty, this is a spin on the show about duck shooters in the swamps of, I believe, Louisiana. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I don't watch the show, believe it or not. I'm Australian. The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. This is a port of a very early 90s PC game, I believe. Graveyard Keeper. I love seeing this right here. I love seeing... Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. This is like Stardew Valley, except you take care of a graveyard as well and a church, and you build up stuff like that. Very quirky. There's a few different quests. This is a game that I'm slowly working on. I've put it down for about a month now, but I adore this game. Definitely a platinum that is very impressive. Family Game Night 4. This is a bunch of different types of board games and stuff in one little collection. Visage is a horror game that I'm very tempted to play this month, actually. I'm definitely tempted to do this for the competition, given that I already have Vampire and can't do that. Until Dawn, this was the first of the sort of walking sim dialogue choices, fates, actions have consequences sort of games. They've since made things like Man of Medan and The Quarry. I think they have a game coming out next month, possibly as well, or next year or something. Minecraft Story Mode. This is Telltale's Minecraft game. Plants vs. Zombies, but I think this is the actual, like, original, like, castle defense Plants vs. Zombies and not the first-person shooters that they brought out a couple of years later that were actually very fun. X-Men Origins Wolverine movie tie-in game. Far Cry 3, the original. You haven't done the multiplayer. I can near guarantee that is the multiplayer you haven't touched. Resident Evil 8, very fun game. I got this platinum and 100% myself earlier this year. I would definitely be very interested to see if you are excited about the DLC that we all know is coming very, very soon. Borderlands 3, we got the platinum but no DLC. This one was kind of more disappointing. I found the gunplay felt a lot better than things like Borderlands 2, but the villains suck. They're awful. That story in general, the child that you bring on as part of the team, no, didn't like it. No, please stop. Persona 5 Strike, and they made an additional trophy list. Like why? Or season pass rather. I bought the first season pass. It sucked. Don't make me buy another one for a battle royale mode. That sounds awful. I have to do it one day, of course, which now makes me very sad. Persona 5 Strikers, this is kind of an action take on Persona 5. This is another one of the spin-offs like Persona 5 Dancing. Dark Souls, the original Dark Souls game. Love to see this one right here. You did this quite a while ago and you smashed it out in just shy of a month. Far Cry 4, like I said, this is my favorite Far Cry personally. I'm going to assume you didn't do the Yeti DLC. I'm going to assume those are the 7 trophies that you're missing there. It's kind of average, but I really enjoy this one. I do wish we saw more of Pagan Min, however, as a villain. Shadow of Mordor, you got the level 25 rune trophy. That is the only thing stopping me from getting the platinum. I just have the worst luck when it comes to trying to get one of those to pop. I do know you can get those at a higher spawn rate in the DLC. However, I've been very lazy about cleaning that up myself. I know some of those DLC trophies, like the Hunter's My Mistress, absolutely suck. We then have LA Noire. This is a GTA-esque detective game set in the 50s and 60s over a period of about 10 years, where you solve various different crimes by going to the detective, by going to the investigation scenes and stuff like that. It's very fun. I highly recommend this one. I will say the collectible trophies in things like sitting in all the models of car do suck, however. Fall Guys Auto Pop, you'll have to see it. The Quarry is the most recent game by the guys that did Until Dawn that I've heard amazing things about. It'll definitely be my cue for the Spooky ABC competition in the Discord. Another Fall Guys Auto Pop. Abzu deep diving adventure, you exploring ruins and stuff under the sea. You can do it very quick in 2 hours, as you can see here. Another stack of Death Stranding. Unraveled at an E rank is interesting. This is like a side-scrolling adventure game where you play as a little character made out of a ball of yarn. I think there's no death trophies and stuff like that that make the second game especially incredibly difficult, but this one as well, fairly hard. Journey, you are a character essentially exploring an abandoned and desolate world. You can link up with other players as well, which is very interesting. There's no dialogue or anything of that. You're sort of just exploring. Sleeping Dogs, this is a game where you play as an undercover police agent in Hong Kong? I got it wrong in an earlier episode and I've since corrected myself, but I'm very tired today and my brain is not working. I think it's Hong Kong. Very, very fun game. I love the whole aspect of certain things pleasing the triad and certain things pleasing the police. You sort of got a balance of two. Very interesting leveling system doing that. I adore the game. I wish we got a sequel. We then have American Ninja Warrior Challenge, which is a take on the TV show of the same name. The first Uncharted that we see here is the first game in the series where you play as essentially Indiana Jones. Far Cry 5, this is the Far Cry set in America. You haven't done any of the DLC, which is very hit or miss. The Mars DLC sucks. The rest of the DLC is actually pretty fun. Definitely recommend maybe going back and cleaning those up for the juicy completion rate boost. We then get some Psychonauts, another version of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Hitman 3's auto pop there. You've only done the Platinum itself. You haven't done the DLC of Hitman 1 and 2. We got some Guacamelee, probably on the Vita, I assume, if you did it in 2013. Paranormal Activity Lost Soul, I think, is a VR Paranormal Activity game. It's one that I am curious about. I think it's episodic from memory. I think it is episodic. And it's definitely one I am curious about maybe doing at some point myself. Yakuza Like a Dragon is a spin-off of is a Yakuza game, but I think it's like a turn-based one, right? I know my good friend Matt has recommended this and Storybook Brawl to me, so maybe I'll get around to doing this one at some point very, very soon. We've got Hitman 3, the legit one, not the auto pop. Again, you've just done the Platinum, but none of the DLC. I would say you might enjoy the DLC for this game because it is just the first game and the second game and all of their levels, which is definitely fun to play. We've got Alice Madness Returns, which is a game I highly recommend most weeks. This is a dark and twisted take of Alice in Wonderland. We've got Detroit Become Human. This is a David Cage game that I can't recommend to people. What if robots had feelings and the game was incredibly boring? Dark Souls 2, you dabbled in, but you didn't really enjoy, I assume. Apex Legends, same deal, which hurts my soul because I love Apex. Astrobot Rescue Mission is the first Astro game alongside Astro's Playroom, for example. Gravity Rush, Vita game that I've heard very, very good things about. Another version of South Park: Stick of Truth. We're starting to get into some games that maybe aren't as completed, which is interesting to see given the absolute stint of 100% we've seen so far. We've got some Capcom fighting games, which are essentially older arcade games ported into one collection. Disney Sing It, the Family Hits. This is a Sing It game. We're all in this together. If you made it this far and just heard that, I apologize. But Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep is a cool one to see. This is a spin-off of Borderlands featuring Tiny Tina, a fan favorite that they tried to replace with an absolutely awful character in Borderlands 3. Neo, you've got the Plat'n. This is a Souls-like set in Japan using a lot of like Japanese spirits of folklore as inspiration for its enemies and stuff, which is a very cool concept. I also love seeing Remnant. You haven't done the Swamps of Courses DLC. I don't even need to open that up to see that that's the one you're missing. Very fun. This is another Souls-like, but it is set as a third-person shooter. And Guns and Souls actually works surprisingly well. I love to see that one right there. That might even be one of the highlights of the list so far for me. That's one that I need to do myself at some point. I've played a lot of it, but I haven't quite got the platinum just yet. There's a lot of RNG involved due to the way the level manipulation works in this game. Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap. We've got some King Oddball, another Minecraft story mode. Diablo 3, obviously Diablo is a classic top-down dungeon delving game. This is the third game in the series, and they haven't made another one of these. We're getting on about a decade since this one came out. PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale is now unobtainable, so it is very nice to see that you got that 100% before closures. We then have Overcooked All You Can Eat, which is a combination of Overcooked 1 and 2. Some Resident Evil 4 here. You've done about, I assume you've beaten the game but haven't gone back for cleanup. Breakpoint is the open world Ghost Recon game, spiritual successor to Wildlands, that I heard was pretty poop. I do have the game. I have been meaning to play it, but I haven't done so yet. So maybe one down the list. I'm actually doing Wildlands on and off at the moment, and I am enjoying it, but it is very, very big and very kind of bloated. Metro is a first-person claustrophobic shooter set in the apocalyptic Russian metros. Love these games. I actually really adore all of these. I need to do the DLC for Exodus at some point, so remind me. We've got Octodad, which is where you play as an octopus who is disguising himself as a human in a bunch of scenarios, such as going to the grocery store to do some shopping, which is a very interesting concept. We've got the first BioShock here. Claire is a horror game that I've heard relatively average mixed things about. Metal Gear. We've got Fallout 3, which is obviously the first Bethesda Fallout game, and probably the second best. I'd say New Vegas is my personal favorite. Adventure Capitalist, we've got Welcome Park. Batman Arkham VR is an interesting one to see. This was the VR take on the Arkham games. It sort of focused more on the detective side of things. Another version of Darksiders. We've got some Resident Evil 6 here, which is nice to see. This is if Michael Bay made a Resident Evil. One day I'll go and do it myself and do all of the awful multiplayer DLCs. We've got The Outer Wilds. You've dabbled in. That's gonna hurt some people. That would be one I would definitely recommend going back and cleaning up. That I need to clean up myself, to be fair. I just hate the rocket ship. The rest of the game, 10 out of 10. Rocket ship, 1 out of 10. Minecraft, you've done the PS3 version. You've done, I assume you auto popped pretty much everything in a realm, but there's since been DLC that maybe you would like to go back and clean up. I don't think they are adding trophies to the PS3 version anymore, so if you did want to go in and get those, you don't have to worry about future DLCs, which is kind of nice. Another version of Octodad Deadliest Catch, or Deadliest Catch rather. Cyberpunk, we all know about the dumpster fire that was Cyberpunk on launch, although I have heard it has gotten better since, so maybe I'll play that soon because I do enjoy those sorts of games. The Walking Dead Onslaught, we've got Fallout 4, which is the most recent of the, well, no, it's not because Fallout 76 exists, but it's the most recent single player Fallout, and the most streamlined, basic, and uninspired and soulless one of the lot, in my opinion. We've got Lego Dimensions, which is an interesting one in that it involves a lot of character stuff, where you got to buy like little minifigures to be able to use the DLCs and stuff. We've got another Resident Evil 7 here where you've done quite a lot of the DLC. I assume it's things like Aoife Must Die that you have left potentially. We've got some Minecraft here again where you've done, I assume, the Platinum and some of the DLCs, but obviously haven't caught up with the most recent ones because they never stop. We're in this for the long haul. We then have PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale again, some Rayman Origins, your very first Platinum trophy in Saints Row the Third just here. Didn't do the DLC again. Dr. Pepper, I would love to see these cleaned up. I reckon you can do it. I believe in you, my friend. Cyberpunk again, this time you have the Platinum. Do let me know if it is worth playing. You did it on the PS4 version, which is the one that was apparently the worst of the lot, so I am definitely very curious. We then have The Evil Within 2. This is a essentially like a spin-off. This was made by the guy that made the first Resident Evil, then made The Evil Within. I don't like the first game. The second game is pretty fun. There's like an open world section that's a lot of fun. It's very the gameplay feels quite good. There's some scary monsters. You can beat the game using essentially just invincibility mode, which makes things very easy compared to the first game, which has a Kumu mode and is incredibly difficult. Sackboy Adventure, LA Noire, the VR case files, is a VR version of LA Noire that focuses solely on the investigations. We've got Sackboy here, which is a spin-off of Little Big Planet, still a platformer where you play as the mascot character. Vacation Simulator, similar to Job Simulator VR, you play just as in a bunch of vacation locations. The Witness you dabbled in but didn't really enjoy too much, I assume. We've got the first Infamous game dabbled in. I'm guessing the shards maybe put you off here. Spec Ops The Line, 100% that's FUBAR difficulty put you off. Very, very tricky difficulty, but very fun game. Definitely one of the best stories in a third-person shooter, in my opinion. Just a shooter game in general. Very, very good. Definitely one that I would absolutely love a port of so I could do the Platinum. The Impatient is a horror game. We've got Cast of the Seven Godsends here. Tom Clancy's The Division is a very impressive Platinum, actually. I love seeing that one right here. This is like a third-person shooter MMO sort of server-based game. I've heard very good things. I've definitely heard good things. I won't be doing it myself. I'm kind of... The Tom Clancy games are enough. Well, Tom Clancy's Wildlands is enough for me for now, and I don't want to do some of those DLCs. We then have Observer with a bit of Ruiner. Mortal Kombat 11 is actually really, really impressive with the 20 hours. This is of course, fighting game, side-on fighting game of sorts. That is an impressive 20 hours. I like that. We got Sega Mega Drive collection. This collection of Sega Mega Drive games ported to PS4. Fallout Shelter was the mobile spin-off of Fallout, where you built your own vault, send your dwellers out to get resources to build more rooms in the vault. Heavy Rain, another David Cage game with a lot of endings. Rezo, I didn't know Resogun was unobtainable now. I guess the servers must have closed at some point. Mutiny Year Zero is kind of like an XCOM clone that I'm very interested in and maybe doing myself at some point. BioShock Infinite is the most recent BioShock, and in my opinion, probably the weakest. We get some Castle of Illusion, some Ticket to Ride USA and France. This is like a train simulator. We get the first Persona 5, which I love to see there. That is a very impressive one that you've done there, Dr. Pepper. There's the Mass Effect Legendary Edition I was talking about. I love to see that one as well. Like I said, everything you did in the trilogy all went into this one like weird 100% standoff. It's the only version of this that I can think of. So very impressive that you have this one here. Hotline Miami is like a top-down early GTA sort of clone of sorts. We've got Papers, Please, which is made by the guy that did Return of the Obra Dinn, where you play as a border agent that is stamping different passports to allow people to enter or leave a country. Static, we got Destiny 2 again. Remember Me, we got Saints Row Get Out of Hell, which is the one in Hell. Vampire, which is a game that's very, very interesting, where you play as a doctor who is also a vampire, and you can choose to either eat people or not feed on blood, but that'll make you considerably weaker. Interesting game, definitely one that I would be looking into during spooky season. Wheel of Fortune, we've got another Mortal Kombat here, which probably explains why you got the other one so fast. I assume some of the stats maybe carry over. Family Feud is here, we've got Saints Row 4, another Watch Dogs, we've got Outer Worlds, which was Obsidian made this, so the guys that made Fallout New Vegas then went and made this one, which is essentially Fallout on several different planets. Another family game night game, another Bioshock, Just in Time, Hidden Agenda, another Skylanders, which is really cool to see. White Boys with Attitude, The Pursuit of Money. I did not know that was a game. That's interesting. Oh, we got another Penny's Arcade Adventure. So maybe this one was just considerably rarer. I forget that this isn't in alphabetical order, so they wouldn't be next to one another. Obviously, normally an account would be. We've got Plague Inc. involved, which is really nice to see. This is where you can make, well, it's a bit too real given the last few years, but you can make your own like Plague and see if it will take over the world. Too real. Another Just Sing game where you got to sing songs. The servers are sadly closed, but you got the 100%, which I love to see. Another Borderlands. We've got 2064 Read Only Memories, which is a VR novel. We got The Witcher 3 dabbled in, but didn't. That one hurts me. That's, if you were to clean up anything on your list, Dr. Pepper, this is the game I would love to see done at some point, mate. We then have Lego Dimensions. Or another one of the Lego Dimensions. Sims 4 is a really cool one to see here. You use the character libraries to get all the trophies, because I did too. Well, I did some of it legit, but you can trophy for having triplets and stuff. Obviously heavily RNG dependent, except that you can download a sim that already has those kids ready to pop. We then have Tom Clancy's Division 2, you got the Platinum again. I like seeing these. These are two really unique ones that we've seen on this account so far. Another Final Fantasy in A King's Tale, Fallout New Vegas, Werewolves Within. We got the first Destiny, which you didn't get the Platinum in. Interesting. I assume it's probably the raids you have left. Dying Light 2 is very, very buggy, and I assume that's why you put it down, because it's why I did. The Windmills trophy, 17 windmills. I'm now at 26. Trophy has not popped, which hurts my soul. Retro City Rampage. We've got Night Trap, Persona 4 Golden, which is kind of the royal version of Persona 4 Golden as far as I'm aware. Bioshock Infinite again. We got the second Darksiders here. You dabbled in this one. I'm assuming you didn't enjoy the sort of Skyrim-esque theme of this one compared to the Metroidvania of the first game. We have the first Dishonored. You've done the Platinum, but not the DLC, which the Dunwich trials are brutal. I can definitely understand that one there. We got some Jeopardy here. Ico, which I think was made by the guys that did Lord's Shadow. What's that game called? Shadow of the Colossus. I think that's made by the same devs. The Escapist, The Walking Dead. We got another version of Broken Age. Metal Slug is here. Some Rocket Arena. This Won't Mind the Little Ones is one I actually kind of really want to do at some point. Which has reminded me. Gang Beasts is a really fun multiplayer game where you and up to 7 other people have to fight it out to see who the last one standing is in a bunch of different environments with a bunch of different hazards. I used to watch Achievement Hunter play this all the time. I definitely want that 100%. Yeah, I might look into that. I might see if Bruce or the guys from Missing Collectible or Plat Chums or someone wants to play this with me. We then have Assassin's Creed Black Flag. You've done everything but the multiplayer and the DLC. The multiplayer, if you can get 3 other people or a couple consoles together, you'll be able to knock that out in an entire day. Just use the bench method to grind your XP. Very, very cruisy. We did the entire thing in a single day. We got some Devil May Cry, Touch My Katamari, Resident Evil Resistance. Ew, don't do that. That game bad. Monster Hunter World is a nice one to see there. Maybe that's one that you could work on a little bit more in the future. Some Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty, you've dabbled in on the PS3. Some Uno, like a bit of Uno. I think the new one's just come out, right? I think so. We've got another version of Ark Survival Evolved. Once again, you've used the console commands to do it in 9 hours, but some of it's still tricky. Like getting all the collectibles and stuff is no easy task regardless. We've got the really cool VR game in The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, which is a lovely ultra rare platinum that I love to see there. Congratulations. We've got some Frost, some Lone Survivor, which I believe is a horror game that I'm semi curious to do over over Halloween myself. You Don't Know Jack is another juicy ultra rare that I love to see, that I think is a quiz game from memory. Some Yakuza 0. Rick and Morty's an ultra rare. That's interesting. I love to see that. Bound by Flame is here. We've got the Disney Afternoon Collection. What the Dub is. It's interesting how a lot of these game show ones are ultra rares, actually, because we've got Disney there. We've got What the Dub, which is a guessing game. The Evil Within, Akumi mode, enough said. Also, this game does not run well. I can absolutely understand that 14%, 100%. We've got Final Fantasy 14, the big MMO. You played a lot of that. That would be a very impressive platinum when you get that. I believe in you, Dr. Pepper. We've got Guardians of Middle-earth. This is unobtainable, tragically. The server's shut, and so all but one trophy is unobtainable, which hurts my soul. Amnesia Collection, you smashed this out. You haven't done the hardcore DLC trophy that they released years after release. Still frustrated about that myself. Sid Meier's Civilization 6 is a really cool one to see here. I actually really like that platinum. It's a really nice, like, city building tactical grid-based game. The Escapists. We've got Tony Hawk, you've dabbled in a little bit. Lovers in a Dangerous Space Time is a really cool one to see. We've got some Star Trek Bridge Crew, some Toe Jam and Earl, some Monster Slayers, another guessing game in Jeopardy in the ultra rares here. Got some Jump Force, Lost at Sea. Alpha Protocol is a cool one. This is like a spy game on the PS3. Very like BioWare, I believe. We've got the original version of Fall Guys. You did it in May, so I assume you played it on launch like the rest of us, and then like the rest of us, when the private servers glitch came out, you got that infallible trophy. We then got the Binding of Isaac Rebirth, some Dead Nation. You dabbled in some Red Dead 2. Right, Metal Gear Rising Revengeance is one I would love to. I would definitely love to see some cleanup in. Actually, that's a very fun game there. Some Terraria. We've got some Injustice 2. Very impressive platinum, that one, actually. Very grindy one. Took you 3 years and 5 months, which I think might be the longest completion rate we've seen so far, which is a cool one. We've got some Titan Souls, some XCOM Enemy Unknown, GTA 5, where the entire servers are closed, so that one hurts to see that you won't be able to do any of the multiplayer there. Another Final Fantasy 14 in the PS5 version this time. I assume there's some stacks and then additional trophies, perhaps. We've got some Drawn to Death, where the servers have closed for this, which means that I believe all of the trophies are unobtainable. Some CNIT. We've got some Pixel Ripped 1989. Keep talking and nobody explodes. That's what I'm doing. No one can explode while I'm making this video. You're all welcome, guys. We've got some Marvel Heroes Omega here, where again the servers have closed to make everything unobtainable. Another party pack game in Jackbox Party Pack. It's crazy to me how many of these are ultra rare. I assume because you just need so many people to do them. Some Wolfenstein the New Colossus, that Mein Leben is no joke. I plan on doing it myself at some point. Some Street Fighter, which is another boxing game. Some Dive Kick, another Jackbox Party Pack collection. Ollie Ollie World 2, which is a side-scrolling skateboarding like point scoring game that is very tricky. I have a couple of very good friends that have got this platinum, and it is no joke. We have some Super Street Fighter, some Don't Starve, Road Not Taken, Persona 4 Arena, Injustice Gods Among Us, which is notoriously very difficult, hence the 0.28% completion rate there, Let It Die, some Pinball, and we're rounding out the list with a game called Roundabout, which no one has the 100% for, which is very sad to see. But that is Dr. Pepper's list. It is a huge list. I think this might end up being the longest video of the series. It's got to be close if it's not, but let's go have a look at Dr. Pepper's stats. So if we scroll up to the top and we go across the stats real quick, we can see that there are nearly 1,800 games played, which is enormous. You have nearly 42,000 trophies for a 95% rarity, for a 76% average rarity. Now, I do know from talking to you in the Discord, you were, I believe, wanting to crack the top 100 people in the US on the leaderboards, and I think you've said since doing that, you plan to not play as many easy, quick games. Obviously, I skipped a lot of those for the video just because I can't really talk about them personally, and I think if I just read a list, it's not as entertaining. But we still covered a lot of games. I think we covered a good 400-500 games right there either way, which is still very, very impressive. But if you'd like your own list reviewed, do leave it in the comments below or join the Platinum Standard Discord. I'll send you a hug if you do. If you'd like your own list looked at, do put them there. I think I just said that. I'm very tired. If you did enjoy the video and you made it this far, tell me what your favorite type of cookie is. Leave a cheeky like or a subscribe, and I'll see you next week. I miss you already. Goodbye.